The Italian mob thought they could control JoeLouis, thought they could trap the brown bomber with fine print and fake promises, thought a simple contract would make the world champion their property. They thought wrong, because when Bumpy Johnson walked into that office on August 14, 1940, he wasn't carrying a contract. He was carrying his razor, and what he did to those three mobsters made them tear up the paperwork and flee Harlem forever. August 14, 1940. Harlem, New York. The summer heat was thick in the air, but the tension inside that cramped office was even thicker. JoeLouis was 26 years old and the most famous black man in America, the heavyweight champion of the world, the brown bomber, the man who'd knocked out Max Schmeling in front of 70,000 people at Yankee Stadium and proved to the world that black excellence couldn't be denied. That fight wasn't just boxing, it was America versus Nazi Germany, democracy versus fascism. In the ring, JoeLouis was invincible, lightning-fast hands, devastating power. Outside the ring, he was a target because Joe had a problem that plagued successful black men in 1940. He was making money, serious money, but he didn't know how to keep it. The boxing world was filled with sharks who could smell desperation from miles away. Boxing purses came in fast. $100,000 for a title defense, more money than most families saw in their lifetimes, but it left even faster. Taxes ate chunks. Family members appeared with their hands out. Hangers-on promised investments that vanished like morning mist. Joe was getting rich and going broke simultaneously, trapped in a cycle that had destroyed champions before him, and the Italian mob saw an opportunity. On this August afternoon, Joe was sitting in a small office on 25th Street. Not a gym, not a training facility, just a cramped room above a barber shop, with peeling paint and a single desk. Across from him sat three men in expensive suits that cost more than most Harlem families made in a year. Vincent Gallo, mid-50s, silver hair slicked back with pomade, the kind of smile that made promises it never intended to keep. He'd been running scams since Prohibition, evolving from bootlegging to investment fraud. Frank, the fixer, Marino, thick-necked and quiet, all muscle pretending to be a businessman. His hands couldn't hide the scars across his knuckles, the calluses that told stories of bones broken for money. And Anthony DiNapoli, younger, nervous energy crackling off him like electricity. He was the detail man who knew every loophole in every contract, every way to make theft look legitimate. They weren't boxing promoters. They were investment advisors, which in 1940 was often another way of saying they were thieves with law degrees. On the desk between them sat a contract, 15 pages of dense legal language, small print, designed to make lawyers squint, and a proposal that made Joe's eyes light up. The Cotton Club investment opportunity. Joe, Gallo said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, you're making great money now, but what happens when you retire, when the punches stop coming? You need to think about your future. He slid a glossy brochure across the desk, like dealing winning cards. Photos of the Cotton Club, Harlem's most famous nightclub, beautiful women in evening gowns, men in tuxedos, champagne flowing. We're expanding, opening 3 more locations. Harlem, the Bronx, Brooklyn. We need investors. Smart investors with name recognition that draws crowds. Frank leaned forward, his voice carrying certainty. You put in $50,000, Joe. Within 2 years we'll triple it. $50,000 guaranteed, plus 10% ownership. Your name on the door. JoeLouis's Cotton Club. Can you imagine walking into your own establishment? Joe could imagine it perfectly. He could see his name blazing in electric lights, could picture crowds parting like the Red Sea, could see financial security for his mother, his family, his uncertain future. What Joe couldn't see was the carefully constructed trap. The contract was designed by experts to look completely legitimate. Official language, corporate structure, revenue projections that made sense to anyone who didn't read the fine print with a lawyer's suspicious eye. But buried in the legal maze, page 11, section 7, subsection C, was the real deal. Joe's $50,000 would disappear into an investment pool controlled entirely by Gallo and his partners. The guaranteed returns were contingent on performance metrics that would never be met. The 10% ownership was in a shell company that didn't actually own the clubs. It was a classic mob scam, perfected over decades of stealing from boxers, musicians, athletes. JoeLouis, genius in the ring, was innocent as a child outside it. I don't know, Joe said slowly, uncertainty creeping into his voice. $50,000 is a lot of money. That's almost everything I got saved. Maybe I should talk to my manager. Your manager doesn't understand high-level investment. Monopoly cut in quickly, too quickly. This is sophisticated business. You need specialists. Plus, Gallo added with calculated urgency, this opportunity closes tomorrow. We got other investors lined up. Sugar Ray Robinson's interested. You walk away now. That's it. Gone forever. It was a complete lie. This trap had been constructed specifically for JoeLouis. Joe reached for the pen like a man reaching for his own execution warrant. That's when the door opened. Bumpy Johnson didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just walked in like he owned not just the building, but the entire neighborhood. Which, in every way that mattered, he absolutely did. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even the street noise from outside seemed to quiet, as if Harlem itself was holding its breath. At 35 years old, Bumpy was Harlem's undisputed king, but he didn't need to announce his authority. Power like his moved in silence, struck without warning, and left impressions that lasted lifetimes. 3 years out of Sing Sing prison, he'd systematically taken over the numbers racket and made it clear to every Italian gangster in New York. Harlem was his territory, his kingdom. He was wearing a charcoal three-piece suit, tailored to perfection. White shirt, pressed to military precision, black tie knotted with mathematical accuracy. His Italian leather shoes were polished to mirror brightness, but what you couldn't see made strong men break out in cold sweats. In his waistband, concealed but somehow still obvious, was the straight razor that had carved his reputation into Harlem's collective memory. Bumpy's eyes moved from JoeLouis, pen hovering over the contract like a sword over a neck, to the three Italians who had suddenly gone very still. Joe, Bumpy said calmly, his voice carrying absolute authority. Put the pen down. Joe looked up, confused. Bumpy, I'm in a meeting. These gentlemen are offering me a business opportunity. I know what you're in, and I know what they're offering. Put the pen down. Joe set the pen on the desk like he was defusing a bomb. Gallo forced a smile that looked painful. Mr. Johnson, this is a private business meeting. We're discussing legitimate investment opportunities. I know exactly what you're discussing. You're discussing how to steal $50,000 from JoeLouis while making him think it's the smartest business decision he's ever made. Bumpy walked to the desk with measured pace. He picked up the contract and began flipping through it. He didn't need to read every word. He'd seen this exact scam before, just with different names. Bumpy tossed the contract back on the desk with casual disrespect. The Cotton Club investment opportunity. He looked directly at Gallo with eyes that could freeze blood. That's creative. Make a man feel like he's buying into something prestigious, something that'll have his name in lights. He turned to Joe with genuine concern. Joe, let me ask you something. You ever been inside the Cotton Club as a customer? Joe shook his head, beginning to understand where this was leading. No, they don't let black people in, Bumpy finished. Not as customers. Only as performers. And you're telling me these three want to make you a partner in a club that won't even let you through the front door. Joe's face changed as reality crashed over him, like a cold wave. The excitement drained away. Gallo tried desperately to recover. That's the old Cotton Club. The new locations will be completely integrated. Bumpy's voice cut through the lie like his razor through flesh. There is no expansion. There are no new locations. There's just a fake investment scheme designed to rob JoeLouis blind. He picked up the contract again, flipped directly to page 11 with precision. Section 7, subsection C, investment pool subject to partner discretion. Translation, we take your money and do whatever we want with it. Bumpy looked at each of the three men in turn. This isn't an investment. It's a trap. Frank Marino's jaw tightened, his businessman facade cracking to show the street enforcer underneath. Look, Johnson, we're legitimate businessmen. We're offering a real opportunity. Bumpy pulled out his razor. Not fast, not threatening, just slow and deliberate, like checking his pocket watch. He placed it on the desk, still in its leather sheath, right next to the glossy Cotton Club brochure. The contrast was stark and terrifying. The room went absolutely silent. Let me tell you what's legitimate, Bumpy said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. JoeLouis is Harlem's champion. 2 years ago, he knocked out Hitler's favorite fighter and made every black person in America stand taller. He's not just a boxer. He's a symbol. He looked each man in the eyes, letting them feel the weight of his complete attention. And you three walked in here, thinking you could turn him into your victim. The leather sheath sat on the desk like a sleeping snake, deadly in its stillness. DiNapoli tried to speak, his voice cracking. We're just offering business. You're offering theft with paperwork. Bumpy pulled the razor from its sheath with theatrical slowness. The blade caught the afternoon light, 7 inches of Sheffield steel, honed to an edge that could split a hair or open a throat. Here's my counteroffer. You tear up that contract right now, page by page. Then you walk out of Harlem and never approach JoeLouis again. Gallo's composure cracked completely. We have connections. I don't care who you work with. In Harlem, I am the connection. And JoeLouis is under my personal protection. He held up the razor, letting light play across the blade. Either you tear up that contract, or I use this razor to carve thief on your foreheads. Then I make sure every gangster from here to Chicago knows you tried to steal from JoeLouis. He let that image sink in. You'll never work again. Nobody will trust you. A dark stain spread across DiNapoli's expensive pants. Frank's hands were shaking. Gallo had gone pale as winter snow. We'll tear it up, Gallo stammered. We'll tear it up right now. Smart choice. Bumpy watched as Gallo ripped the contract apart with trembling hands, page by page. 15 pages of legal theft reduced to confetti. When the destruction was complete, Bumpy folded his razor and put it away with the same theatrical slowness. Joe, these gentlemen are leaving. You're coming with me. Outside on 25th Street, the summer heat hit them like opening an oven door. Harlem was alive with the energy of a community that knew how to survive and thrive. JoeLouis finally found his voice. Bumpy, how did you know I was there? Word travels fast in Harlem, Bumpy said, lighting a cigarette. Someone saw you going into that office with 3 Italians in suits. That got back to me in 10 minutes. They walked down the street, people nodding respectfully as Bumpy passed. Not gestures of fear, but acknowledgments of genuine respect. I almost signed it, Joe said quietly, shame in his voice. I thought it was real. I thought I was being smart. Bumpy stopped walking and faced the heavyweight champion. Joe, you're the best fighter in the world, but the world outside the ring is more dangerous than anything you'll face inside it. There are more men trying to rob you with contracts than trying to knock you out with punches. He put his hand on Joe's shoulder, like a father giving advice. You want to invest? Fine, but get your own lawyer. Someone who works for you, who reads every word. You don't sign anything unless you understand every sentence. And Joe, remember something. You're not just JoeLouis the boxer. You're JoeLouis the symbol. Every black kid in America looks at you and sees possibility. You have a responsibility to stay smart, stay free, stay in control. Joe nodded. Why'd you help me, Bumpy? Because when you knocked out Schmeling, I felt it too. When you stand in that ring, representing us, you're representing me, and I protect what's mine. Bumpy smiled slightly. Besides, Joe, I'm a criminal. I break laws. I hurt people. But you know what I don't do? I don't steal from my own. I don't trap heroes. Vincent Gallo, Frank Marino, and Anthony DiNapoli left Harlem that afternoon and never returned. Word spread through New York's underworld. JoeLouis was untouchable. Bumpy Johnson had drawn a line. JoeLouis went on to defend his heavyweight title 25 times over the next decade. He made millions and became one of the most beloved athletes in American history. And yes, he had financial troubles later in life. Bad investments, the IRS, the problems that plagued many athletes. But he never fell for a scam again. Because Bumpy Johnson had taught him to read the fine print. Years later, in 1962, a reporter asked Joe, "You had a long career. A lot of people tried to take advantage of you. How did you stay smart?" Joe smiled that gentle smile that had charmed America. I had a friend who looked out for me when I didn't even know I needed looking out for. Who was this friend? If you're from Harlem, you know his name. What matters is he taught me that being strong in the ring isn't enough. You gotta be smart outside the ring too. In 1981, JoeLouis died. At his funeral, a letter was found, written years earlier and meant to be opened after his death. It was addressed to Bumpy Johnson. You saved me from thieves in suits. You taught me that not every smile is friendly and not every opportunity is real. You showed me that strength isn't just about hitting hard. It's about knowing when to walk away. I never properly thanked you, So I'm thanking you now. You weren't just the king of Harlem, you were my protector. And I owed you everything. Bumpy never saw that letter. He died, but the people who knew both men understood what that August day in 1940 was really about. It wasn't about a contract or 50. It was about a principle. Harlem protects its own. Heroes don't get robbed on our watch. And anyone who tries learns the hard way, one razor cut at a time. If this story of protection, wisdom, and power moved you, hit that subscribe button and smash that like. Share this with someone who needs to understand that the biggest threats don't come from fists, but from contracts and fake promises. Drop a comment. Have you ever almost fallen for something that seemed too good to be true? Let's keep these untold stories alive. Bumpy Johnson protected Harlem's legends, and their stories deserve to be remembered.